If you've ever heard of the Amityville Horror, then you know that the events which took place in the now infamous Long Island home are just as chilling today as they were back in 1974. And while it might seem like the kind of story that's best left behind in the sleepy suburbia of yesteryear, the truth is that this haunting has far from come to an end. In fact, some say the house is still actively looking for new victims to terrorize. Here's the terrifying tale of the Amityville Horror, the house that still haunts America. For those not already in the know, the Amityville Horror refers to the gruesome murder of 6 people in Amityville, New York in 1975 at the hands of one of their own. Ronald DeFeo, who was only 23 years old when he committed his crimes, shot and killed his parents and 6 siblings in their beds with a shotgun and a Marlin rifle. But what made the crime so shocking was that rather than acting in self-defense or over some kind of disagreement, Ronald had simply snapped due to a psychotic episode. According to him, he heard voices telling him to kill his entire family. And after he did, he went out and bought pizza, played some video games, and hung out with friends, all while his 6 dead siblings lay just feet away in the next room. Upon hearing of the horrific crime, investigators were shocked. Not only was it one of the most brutal killings they'd ever seen, but they also couldn't understand what could have possessed Ronald to do such a thing. He'd been a model citizen throughout his life, and no one, including his own family, believed he was capable of such violence. After being arrested, he confessed to everything, explaining that he'd been hearing the voices for some time before finally giving in to them. He was quickly tried and sentenced to 6 consecutive jail terms of 25 years each, where he remains to this day. But what makes the story truly horrifying is that, while Ronald is obviously responsible for the murders, many believe that there may have been something else at play as well, something in the home itself that drove him to insanity and turned him into a remorseless killer. This may sound like a strange idea given that there is no concrete evidence to support it, but when you look at the events surrounding the crime, it's hard not to wonder if perhaps the real killer wasn't the man in the dock at all, but something more sinister lurking in the shadows. For starters, the home itself was incredibly creepy. Built in 1924, it had been the site of several other crimes prior to the massacre, including a hit-and-run, a murder, and even a mysterious death that never seemed to be explained. Add to this the fact that it was built on top of an ancient Native American burial ground, and you have yourself a recipe for disaster. What's more, the locals didn't exactly have good things to say about the home. Many claimed that it was cursed and that anyone who lived there would eventually meet a grisly end. Even the police were hesitant to enter the house after the crime, with one officer later claiming that he felt an evil presence as soon as he stepped inside. And that's just scratching the surface. There were also strange occurrences in the weeks leading up to the massacre that suggested something sinister was at work. For example, George DeFeo, Ronald's father, had been receiving threatening phone calls from someone who claimed to be a hitman, and just days before the killings he told his son that he was afraid someone was going to break into the house and kill everyone. Little did he know that his worst fears would soon become a reality, though not in the way he expected. Another odd detail is that Ronald himself had exhibited signs of severe mental illness long before the massacre. He had been hospitalized twice for psychiatric treatment and was known to hear voices that no one else could. This could simply be explained by his troubled childhood, but some believe that his illness may have actually been caused by the haunted house itself. After all, he'd been living there his whole life, and the stress of the home may have eventually pushed him over the edge. But while these theories are interesting, they're ultimately just that, theories. There is no way to prove that the house was actually haunted or that any ghosts living within its walls had a hand in the massacre. As sad as it may be to admit, the truth is likely far less exciting. But that doesn't mean we can't take a few moments to appreciate just how scary this house really is. When you consider all the dark events that have taken place there, it's hard not to feel a sense of dread wash over you. It's also difficult to imagine what it must have been like for those first responders who entered the home after the massacre. They had no way of knowing what they would find upstairs, and no one could have blamed them if they refused to go in. Yet they did anyway, knowing that innocent lives had been lost and that justice needed to be served. It's clear then that the Amityville horror story is a chilling one, even without taking paranormal activity into account. But what happens when you add ghosts into the mix? Well, that's where things get really interesting. As I mentioned earlier, the home had a reputation in the community as being haunted, and many of the locals claimed that the killings were simply the latest in a long line of strange and mysterious deaths that had occurred there. But is there any truth to these claims? Well, it's hard to say for sure, but there are certainly some strange coincidences that suggest there may be more to the story than meets the eye. For example, the house was originally owned by a man named Peter and Catherine Devlin, who lived there happily for many years. But one day, Peter suddenly disappeared and was never seen again. Some say he was murdered, while others claim he was taken by aliens. The truth is, no one knows what happened to him, but his sudden disappearance certainly adds an eerie twist to the tale. And that's not all. In 1928, a fire broke out in the house, which is said to have been started by Peter's daughter, who was only 9 years old at the time. She died in the fire along with 2 other children, and many believe that their ghosts still haunt the home today. Add to this the fact that the house was built on top of an ancient burial ground, and you have a recipe for disaster. So, while there is no concrete evidence to support the idea that the house is haunted, there are certainly some strange coincidences that suggest it might be. After all, who knows what kind of secrets lie hidden beneath those creaky floorboards? In the end, the Amityville horror story is a truly terrifying one, whether you believe in ghosts or not. The image of a peaceful suburban home being turned into a massacre site is enough to send chills down anyone's spine. And when you add the extra layer of possible paranormal activity, it becomes clear that this is one house that should be avoided at all costs. Perhaps the most haunting part of the story is that it could have been any home. This wasn't some isolated cabin in the woods or dilapidated mansion on a hill. It was a normal middle-class house in a quiet neighborhood. And yet unimaginable horrors took place there. It just goes to show that evil can lurk anywhere, even in the most unsuspecting places. For those still curious about the Amityville horror, there are plenty of resources available to satisfy even the most morbid curiosity. Books, documentaries, and podcasts have been made about the case, and there are even tours of the house itself available. But whether or not you believe in ghosts, one thing is for sure: the Amityville horror is a story that will continue to terrify us for years to come. And with that, we're gonna wrap things up for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave us a thumbs up and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We're always looking for new and exciting content to bring to our viewers, and your feedback helps us do that. So be sure to stay tuned for more amazing content. Thanks for watching. Until next time.